Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about a very cool topic, which is the FASB's invitation to comment the 2025 Agenda Consultation. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Agenda Consultation, periodically the FASB asks us, what should we work on next? And we actually recently had an agenda consultation back in 2021. They put out the invitation to comment, and in June of 2022, they issued their report that explained what they decided to work on. And so today, they're going to talk about the 2025 invitation to comment that came out in January, and that they're now asking again for feedback. And that's because they had a lot of progress on that report, right? So since they've identified what they want to work on, they've actually made a lot of progress towards what they wanted to do for that. The first time around, they had over 200 stakeholders that they worked with to create the invitation to comment, and then received over 500 comment letters in response to the invitation to comment. So I think that you can see that they really do want to get our feedback, and this is a great way to do it. So as I mentioned, this was actually a New Year's gift, basically. Came out that first few days of January 2025. And really, this is in response to the fact that they are nearly done, right? Digital assets, software, a lot of the things that were at the top, government grants, they're making great progress on. They're either finalized, have an exposure draft, or are about to have an exposure draft with those major topics. And so they were like, okay, well, we took your top 10. We hit on your top 10, or either, done, like digital assets, or crypto assets, I should say. That's the technical title. Or, we have an exposure draft forthcoming, like software. And so as a result, they're ready to take on their next project. So unsurprisingly, they've done pretty much the same methodology. They started by going out and reaching out to their stakeholder groups, whether that's the Private Company Council, the Emerging Issues Task Force, the Not-for-Profit Advisory Committee. They go to their committees and they say, what's up next? What's on your list? What didn't we get to last time that you think is now really important? Or has something sprung up over the last few years, right? And so they started with that. And then in January 2025, they issued their invitation to comment. And so now it's open until the end of June. And so we have these next few months to think about what would we like to do. They provide us with a list of some of the things that they heard from those stakeholders, but they are also open to additional feedback. So kind of put people on alert on what they think is really needed. And then obviously this summer and beyond, they'll review the feedback. They'll kind of put together their game plan. And I'm assuming that sometime either late this year or early next year, we'll get their report on what their plans are based on this invitation to comment. So the purpose of this is to get broad stakeholder feedback, right? So what is on the minds of stakeholders, whether that's users, whether that's preparers, whether that's auditors, right? And not just their normal committees, right? There's only so many people who can be on the NAC or who can be on the PCC. And they want to get those people's opinions, but they want to hear from more people about what are the things that are really concerning with respect to financial reporting. And so that feedback really helps them figure out, how do I prioritize my resources, right? They don't have an unlimited staff. They're just like any other entity. They have to figure out, how do I keep my staff busy on the right things? And so what are the topics that we really need to dive into? So when we look at the feedback, right, they want to know whether the items that are described in the invitation to comment, which again are based on what the advisory committees told them, are the areas for which there is potential for significant improvement. The priority, right? So if we are going to say this is important, like, is it more important or less important than this? How urgent is it? Is this something that needs to be addressed like yesterday? Or is this something that has a lot of opportunity? And then my favorite is not just tell us your problems, but give us some potential solutions, right? So if you were in charge and you don't like the accounting now, what solution would you provide that you think is better? And if you are providing that solution, what are your cost and benefit analysis? So basically, if you were on the FASB, what would you do? And then, are there any other accounting and financial reporting topics beyond what they heard from those standard setters? Maybe something, maybe the advisory councils didn't think of it, that you think would be important to add to the agenda. And again, the priority and urgency of those. And again, this could be emerging accounting issues. It could be changes in business models. It could be areas for convergence if you're concerned about that. But really just trying to get your feedback on what's important for the future of financial reporting. So there are certain criteria. They can't just do everything. So they have to figure out, is there an identifiable and and sufficiently pervasive need, right? So if there's only 5 companies in the whole world that are impacted by this, that's not going to make it to the agenda. Sorry, 5 companies that are impacted. It's just not prevalent enough. And that's sort of the story of crypto, right? Many people for years asked for crypto, and the FASB kept saying it wasn't pervasive enough. And then it became pervasive enough, and that's how it made it on. So again, we do look at how, who is going to be impacted, how many entities. And then, is there a solution, right? So don't give me problems for which there are no solutions, right? I say that all the time. FASB is basically saying the same thing. Is there a technically feasible solution? And what is the cost benefit? Because if the cost to implement outweighs the benefit, they're not going down that path either. And then is it identifiable to scope? And you'll notice that with like the crypto assets, the scoping actually ends up coming back again to the into this invitation to comment. So they addressed a narrow scope version of crypto, and now people are asking for more. So these are sort of the, sort of criteria that they're using when they're going to take your feedback for putting it on either the actual active agenda or potentially on the research agenda for future research before it becomes on the technical agenda. So as mentioned, they already got some feedback from various groups. And so there are different chapters that they basically are going to explain what they heard and sort of ask some questions about each of these different areas. So combination of entities, equity method investments. There's a lot of things that people don't like about it. And there's some people who want to just get rid of it altogether. They say it's not useful. Common control, the definition, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I get a lot of questions about common control. We have standards who use the word common control, but it's never been defined. Not because they didn't want to. They had an EITF that worked on it, but they couldn't come to consensus because it's so complicated. So again, it might be pervasive, but the question is, can they come up with a solution? And so we'll see about that one. Financial instruments is chapter 2. These are your below market loans. ESOP repurchase options, I believe, are in there. Intangibles is another area that they're looking at in chapter 3. Other liabilities and assets in chapter 4, retirement and other employee benefits. So there's some information there. Income and expenses is chapter 6. Presentation and disclosure of financial reporting information. Heavy requests for disclosures. No surprise, it's mostly users. Users always want more, and the preparers always want less, and the auditors always want something that's auditable. So again, chapter 7, heavy on presentation and disclosure. And then a little bit of what's on the current research agenda in chapter 8. So other topics that might be of interest to you that are in here, partnership accounting. May or may not be of interest to you. Principal versus agent. So I think that's in the income and expenses, chapter 6. There's a lot of questions about revenue recognition. So again, now that we've gotten through revenue recognition and we're seeing what are the peer review findings, we're seeing some of the application issues. There's a little bit of more in there. Airline industry, if you are involved in the airline industry, there's been some really interesting questions that came out of their A&A guide update that now we're taking a closer look at here. And then again, a lot focused on disclosures. So if you go into each chapter, there's many topics in each chapter with questions. If your topic isn't addressed in any of these chapters, feel free to bring it up. So as I mentioned, comments are due June 30th of 2025. And this gives us some ample time. Well, it did come out in January. We couldn't prioritize it for the blog because obviously there's been a lot of activity out there. But I did want to put it early into March because I wanted to give you some time to think about it, knowing that you might be a little busy right now. So between now and June 30th, I hope you get the opportunity to provide feedback because we know it does make a difference, right? So to me, we've seen the application, right? We look at the 2021 invitation to comment and all the projects that they have worked on, finalized, et cetera, since then. I know this can be really meaningful. So I do encourage you to consider taking us up on that and giving them some feedback on of these chapters, which, topics are really important to you. And then are there any topics that aren't important that you're like, no, please don't touch that. It's fine. Don't fix it. It's not broken. They want that feedback too. All right. So it's been my absolute pleasure having you today on the Genuine Learning blog, and I hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.